Okay.
and then we'll just. Okay. Okay.
What is that? Is that a? Oh, it looks like a what is that thing? A giraffe. Are you wearing a giraffe?
No, I'm wearing an elephant. I'm wearing an elephant.
Oh,
I'm not a Delta yet.
well, I'm sure that we want you to be.
Thank you. My auntie is a Delta, and she says hello, Sora. She does
All
say
right.
hello.
Say, tell her TTBOD.
Okay, I will. Wait, let me write that down. T.
TTBOD. She'll know what that means.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sure she will. I'm sure she will. I'm sure she will. Troy, are we ready? Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Good evening, everyone. Tonight is truly a special night on Hijinks. It is a monumental and historical moment. I have the honor and pleasure of introducing a living legend. But before I do, I'm going to read a poem that was inspired by a living legend. It is called Does the Caged Bird Fly? Does the caged bird fly? When the prison is, when the prison it's in has become its comfort zone. Does the caged bird sing when it silences its own voice? Cage door opens. Does the caged bird fly? Or like Plato's caves, are its dreams just shadows on the wall? Will it spread its wings to fly? Born inside a prison which is thought to be a home. Modern day slavery just goes by another name. But what is a name if a name of a rose that is not as sweet would smell as sweet? Does the caged bird fly? When the cage is trapped in is named thought, or better identified as sunken place. Spread its wings, instinct, the rest will fall into place. If only it had the thought, if only it claimed its power, if only it knew the cage doesn't exist. When will the caged bird fly? So, this evening on Hijinks, I have the honor of, like I said, to introduce a living legend. To be honest, a woman who needs no introduction, but who said she would rather kick it with thugs than with the other people as well, who puts the G in OG, might I add, and who is a poet, author, revolutionary, educator, phenomenal woman, and so many more words that they haven't invented yet. I would like to introduce to you none other, Dr. Giovanni.
Thank you. Did you write that? That's a lovely poem.
Yes, I wrote that. Yes,
Oh,
I did. I did write
that's
that.
very nice. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was actually inspired by you when I read Ego Tripping. Because, I
Ah,
mean, I actually read the whole book that you wrote. I forgot the name of it. It's a composite. But
right,
I read Ego Tripping, and at the end, you had spoke of a bird flying.
right.
And to me, I always believe in the power of thought. And the thing is what I'm realizing is that as a people, we're suffering from believing in ourselves and tackling with self doubt. But if only we knew that we were kings and queens. So the bird I speak of are black people. And if
Right.
only we break past these mental chains that slavery has placed on us from being dehumanized, then I
Right.
personally believe we could fly because the cage doesn't exist.
That's right. Oh,
Yes.
it's wonderful. It's a wonderful poem.
Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you. Thank you. I greatly appreciate that. I greatly appreciate that. So, besides the fact that I'm super excited to even be speaking to you, just to dive in, how was your day today?
It's been a long day today, so I'm glad to be sitting down talking to you. And I'm gonna go home, and I guess I probably shouldn't say this, but I've had this urge to fix some a ham bone. I'm gonna go home and put
Ooh,
my ham
yes,
bone.
Hambo.
That's
Yes,
my
Hambo.
dog you hear, and I don't know who's disturbing her because she usually doesn't care about anything, but somebody must be walking down the hall. I'm
Okay.
sorry. She'll stop.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. No, she's fine. She's fine. She's a dog. Let her do what she's supposed to do.
but
It's
she's
totally
supposed to shut up.
okay, okay, okay. So pretty much current news. Have you heard about Kendrick Lamar winning the Pulitzer Prize for music?
Oh no, that's wonderful. I have not.
Yes,
That
yes,
is,
he did.
oh,
Yes, he did. He won the Pulitzer Prize. You know, some critics are saying it was just a time for hip hop, and due to the trend, you know, with blacks trending and all, that
right.
it was time for him. to
Oh,
win.
that's lovely.
Yes.
You know, but I'm just sorry that 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 it. I'm not sorry, it's Kendrick. I'm sorry that Tupac is not here.
Right.
I think I think that he would enjoy just knowing that what he has created has grown into what it now is.
Yes.
That it's a music heard all over the world. I think that's so wonderful.
Yes. Yes. Yes, it is. Actually, Kendrick Lamar was inspired by Tupac. I actually
Oh,
wrote my 11th grade thesis on Tupac, and I know you have a tattoo, Thug Life, right?
I do. I certainly do. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, have you acquired any more tattoos since then?
No, no, I didn't want any. I just wanted to let, and I didn't know Pac, and I didn't know his mother, Afeni, but I wanted her to know that we miss her son,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to know that we mourn with her. And I
Right.
thought the only way or the best way to do it was through a tattoo. So
Right.
I'm not tattooed up. I just had this one that I got for Pac.
Okay. Okay. Now, speaking of Tupac, do you have a conspiracy theory on how he died?
I don't have a conspiracy theory other than I was talking to some people today. I don't know why Pac and Biggie, why that hasn't been solved. I
Mm.
don't understand.
Mm. That might be on the same lines as Martin Luther King. Well, no, they know who did it with Martin. They actually found an alibi for that. Um, I
They
was.
know who, but they don't know who paid the person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
James Earl Jones, James Earl, whatever, killed, but we don't know who paid James Earl
Right.
because he trailed King and trailed King and trailed King. And I have a line in I wrote a poem for King, and it says this is a sacred poem, and I have the line that says I know who killed the king, but knowing who killed him doesn't say I know who paid the person who did it. I know the assassin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, speak. I mean, not to just go, but going with the flow of conversation. Even still with that, with King. I mean, you were around during that time, and I know that you did write a poem about that. Do
Oh
you
yeah.
feel that with the slew of murders in that short time frame, do you feel like that had a mental effect on you?
I think it had a middle effect on the world.
Right, right.
Losing King was bad. I mean, there's no question about that. But we lost Medgar Evers. It started with the murder of Emmett Till, and
Mm.
we went to that because when Emmett Till was murdered, Rosa Parks said no, and I started putting my T-shirt. I have a T-shirt on that says "No." Rosa
Yes! Oh my God, I want that shirt so bad.
and oh yeah, and it started a whole movement, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it affected all of us because it was time to stop. It was time that my generation said enough,
Right.
and we did our best to change the world. And of course, your generation is having a different number of a different level of questions, but your generation is also saying it has to stop.
Mm.
And I think that that's good. I said to my class the other day, though, and I don't know if you thought about this. I wonder what the relationship of Donald Trump is to the death of Michael Jackson.
Mm. Mm. What the relationship of Donald Trump is to Michael Jackson.
Death,
No,
not to Michael Jackson, because that's easy to figure out,
mm-hmm.
but to the death of Michael Jackson. I
Mm.
wonder why there there has to be a novel. There has to be something that's going to come out because it wasn't just the relationship, the friendship, because you can go look those things up. That
Right.
I think there's uh, an article. You can go on what is that thing?
Google.
Safari,
Oh.
and it'll say the unusual relationship of Donald Trump and Michael Jackson. But I'm wondering what the relationship is of Trump to his death. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a poet, so I'm not going to be able to answer that. But I know some people. Well, I'm not that smart, but I know some people are out there saying, "Well, wait a minute, we don't know, and we don't really know very much about the death of Michael.
Right.
We just
Right.
know that he died, and we started this conversation with the death of Pac and Biggie. So it's a question to say why do we lose these people?
Right. Right. That's understandable. And I'm reading here that they were friends prior to Trump even entering into politics. Just like I don't know if you, but Oprah interviewed Trump. She had his entire family on there, and she was
Well,
interviewing him as a billionaire, so to speak. So people have. I remember I was watching a movie with Whoopi Goldberg in it. It was I forgot what it was called, but remember when Whoopi dressed like the man to own her own business because she had got fired? It's
No, I
slipping my
know.
mind. But he was even in that movie,
Oh,
and he went to go sit with her. So I was just. I found it odd when you do go back in the 80s. You are correct. You see that Donald Trump was kicking it with a lot of celebrities, so to
yeah.
speak. But he was a billionaire. I guess he was a celebrity in his own right. And on top of that, Obama has already said that politics is making that crossover from politics into reality TV.
I guess so, but and I mean no disrespect to anybody.
Hmm.
Billionaires can be friends of anybody, so he didn't have to pick black celebrities.
Right.
That's what I want to understand. What was it about? A lot of people don't like black people. So what was it about the black billionaires that made Trump decide he's going to hang out with them? He
Right.
could have been. He could hang out with it. He could have hung out with Prince Harry. He could hang out with anybody. So
Mm.
what made him choose the blacks?
That is true. I mean, if that's the question, what made the Jews choose the blacks?
Well, I think that when we look at the Jewish community, we're looking at the same community that's being oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
Six
Mm-hmm.
million Jews were killed. I don't care what those people are saying and what lies they're telling. There was a Holocaust,
Right.
and 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust. And America closed its doors to the Jewish community that got on a, a boat and came over. America wouldn't let them in. But that's pretty much the way that America has treated black people. So I don't know why we wouldn't be friends with Jewish people. We
Mm-hmm.
should be. And we shouldn't let anybody come between us because we both had the same problems.
Right. That is very true. That is very true. Just to transition very quickly, just I want to take it back for a second and actually talk about Gemini. So that, to be quite frank, that was one of my favorite books that I have read thus far. You do write how you speak. That is, and I only recognize that because I do the same thing.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, and that just inspired me more to just be my very authentic self. So, with that being said, I remember there was a part in the book when you were little, you had just gotten into a fight with a boy named Skippy. Do you remember that?
I remember Skippy.
Okay. But
I remember, yeah, because he lived around the corner from us. I was fighting Skippy.
yeah, you said you were a
Good for
tyrant.
me.
You said you were a tyrant when you were little. You were very feisty. You were
Yeah.
definitely warrior born. But
Oh, yeah.
apparently, your sister Gary,
Mhm.
uh, he had been doing something, and you went to go defend Gary's honor because
Yeah.
that's what it was meant. But you said that during the fight, you got punched in the nose, your nose was bleeding, and no one came to your aid. And you
Right.
said that was okay because as you walked home, you felt a sense of pride to yourself.
Right.
I really want to just ask you that no one understood your positioning or thought, but you still found proud in that. If you were standing behind the door when your 4-year-old self walked in, what would you tell your 4-year-old self today?
I would say be honest.
Okay.
Whatever it is, be honest with yourself because that's all that's going to matter. And I'm not a fighter like that, but I have been known to fight. I got beaten up by when I was in the sixth grade. Rose and what was her name? I can't think of her name. Rose beat me up, and I remember that. And I remember thinking fighting is not a good idea. That's when I learned fighting was not a good idea. And I was in the sixth grade, and I quit fighting. But I was in school, and I had several teachers that I just adored. I had a nun. I didn't have a nun, but there was a nun there, Sister Althea, whom I loved so much, and she became like a second mother to me. And my mother, one of my mother's best friends was Flora Alexander, and Flora, I saw a lot of. So I began to realize there has to be something else in the world out there. There has to be
Hmm.
something else that I can look for.
Right, right. No, no, that's amazing. That's amazing. Now, when you were writing Gemini, you said that you believe for it to be a fictionalized autobiography. And and when Barbara asked you, well, what does that mean? And you were like, well, how the hell am I supposed to know? I want to know, do you have a clear understanding of what you meant by that?
I think that writers write the story. We write the narrative that we believe in. And I've been saying to my class, I teach here at Virginia Tech.
Hmm.
I've been saying to my class, you have to remember that I am not me. And I say that to them because using first person singular is an important voice if you're a writer. You have to learn to say I, and you have to learn to say me. But I am not me, and she is not me. And so, if you can learn to use that adjective, if you can learn to use first person singular, and then if you can learn to use the she on it, then you can find a way to tell the story that you want told. And you have to feel free to tell the story, and you have to feel comfortable to say I without knowing, without thinking, oh, that's me, that I'm saying something about myself, because mostly you aren't. We have a prize here at Virginia Tech that I am a part of, and I'm so proud of it. It's called the Steger. And the young lady who won second place in the prize, it's a beautiful poem, talked about her Japanese grandmother, and that her Japanese grandmother only spoke Japanese. She's a Black American. And of course, everybody's listening to the poem, and they're thinking she couldn't have a Japanese. And of course, she didn't. What she was trying to do is find a way to use I and me and to tell the story of being different. And it was an incredible poem, and everybody loved the poem. But that's what you are hoping your students learn, is to find a way to tell the story that they want told, and to not be afraid to say I and me. That sometimes that's the only voice that will get the story told, but it's not necessarily what you actually did.
Okay, okay. That actually makes complete sense, because I remember, well, I just started writing with I, because before I would always write with you, for example, like you this, and sometimes I always think like the past me is trying to send a message to the future me. Definitely
Right,
believe in that. Like, be positive, all is good, in due time, greatness is inevitable. Things like that, right?
right,
So,
exactly.
yes. So I know that when you wrote Gemini, you were about 28, right?
I think I was
Okay.
27, 28.
Okay. That's my age today. So I know that you went and you had a first glance at the era of the 60s, how the struggle was at the 60s. My question to you is, from then to now, even with the latest Starbucks fiasco, and Mike Brown and Sandra Bland, do you see any difference in the treatment of Black people from the 60s to today?
Oh my, yes. First of all, my generation, I'm 74, you're 28, so we can see the difference. My generation felt that our job was, and we did it, to get rid of segregation.
Mm-hmm.
Your generation's job, and it's going to be a job, is to learn to live in a non-segregated world. Now,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean that you're going to live in a non-racist world. The world is going to be racist forever. As
Mm-hmm.
far as I can see, there's always going to be racism, but
Mm-hmm.
there's not going to be segregation. So one of the things you have to fight now is how do you find yourself
Mm-hmm.
in that world of non-segregation, and what it is that you want to do without being held back by what somebody wants to say. But that's what we did. We did it a long time ago. I think that's why you see people like me are not trying to tell anybody what to do. I am a big fan of Black Lives Matter. I think that
Mm-hmm.
those are just wonderful young people. And somebody called me a long time ago and said, well, what would you tell them? I would tell them, good luck. Let's go forward. Do what you do. I've had the pleasure in New York and in Chicago of marching with them. And half the time they didn't even know I was there. I just joined the line. And the kids were laughing because somebody said, aren't you? And I'm like, shh, because I wasn't trying to be anything but a part of what they were. And I think it's important that your generation figure out what it is that you want to do,
Mm-hmm.
where it is that you want to go. And you're not living in a generation of segregation. You're not living in a generation of slavery. You're living in another generation. And I guess if there is one thing I would want to see you do, is that you have to pay a little more attention. Your generation has to pay a little more attention to space, because clearly we are going to spend time in space.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's anybody that needs to be aware of space and prepared for spending time in space, it's going to be Black women, women your age,
Mm-hmm.
because Black women can go any place and find a way to make it home. And that's quite a talent.
Yes, yes. I heard that you said if we went to Mars, they should send a Black woman to Mars with grits or yams, correct?
Oh my, yeah, absolutely. Who else would you send?
Exactly. And I know you were working with NASA in the space program. What has come of that? That was back in like
Not as much
2016.
not as much as I want, because what I want NASA to do is to take about 10 writers and send them to Antarctica and have them just spend like a couple of weeks in Antarctica by themselves, because Antarctica is the closest place on Earth that we have to space, and to see what it is, what the thoughts and the dreams are. I think that that would be so important right now. And of course, we got Donald Trump, right now they don't want to, not they, but the money won't be approved for us to send 10 or 12 kids down to Antarctica. I wish that we would. I wish somebody would listen to me. I'm right on it. I wish that somebody would listen to me and say, oh, yeah, Nikki makes sense. Let's do that. And let's find out what the dreams are of the writers. Let's find out what the writers are dreaming. And that's what I'm excited about.
Okay. Now, you mentioned living in a world that is not segregated. Do you believe in a post-racial world?
What do you mean post-racial?
By post-racial, meaning that people don't see race and the only race that they see is human.
I think it's going to be a while before they get there, but now we're back to space. The one thing that we know as we begin to spend time in space is that we on this planet, this planet is in space. Earth is in space. People keep forgetting that. And we act like there's space as if somehow or another we're not in space. We're in space. So one of the things we want to teach, and I'm teaching writing right now. My class that I teach is writing for a young audience. And one of the things I hope that I'm helping my students to realize is that we have to teach the kids now, the youngsters that are coming up reading our books, hopefully, we have to teach them that they are earthlings. This is going to be a part of our job, because race is, as you know, race is a concept. It didn't make, there's nothing about race that makes sense. Exactly. And the scientists have now taken that on and said, okay, and you can pick up anything. Look at National Geographic, anything. They're finally saying, we know that it doesn't make sense. But what does make sense is, of course, being an earthling. And if we're going to recognize that we are earthlings, then we're going to have to also recognize that gender does not make sense. And so we're going to have to take those next steps to what does it mean to be an earthling? Because as we go into space and find other life forms and they communicate with us, and essentially they're going to say, as we learn how to talk with them, who are you? Where do you come from? We're going to be able to say, I am an earthling. I come from the third planet from the yellow sun. And I think that that's the only thing that's going to be important.
Right. I agree with that. I can actually envision that and see that. Yeah. You spoke of future of our generation today, and you were saying that we need to pay more attention. Baba Dick Gregory actually wrote a short phrase about, well, he gave us advice about actually how to stay woke. My question to you is, do you believe that young people are so far removed from the struggle that they can't recognize the struggle?
I don't think so, because so many young people are finding that all of their friends are in jail. And so they're recognizing that jail is not a good idea. And our good friend, and I'm proud to call her friend, Tayari Jones, has a wonderful book that's on the bestseller, and I'm proud of that too, called An American Marriage. And that's where an innocent Black man is put in jail, and how they are going to relate, how his wife has to either wait on him, how she has to relate to him. And I think that, no, I think the kids are struggling to figure out what they want to do. So the first generation that comes through is going to have to say, as they are, how should I react? I don't think that they're reacting badly, but I don't think that they're doing a great job. Right. But the kids that are coming after them, and we're watching that now with the kids, look at what happened with the march, with the kids saying, guns have to go. Right. It's time that it's time that the high school kids now, and see, you're out of, you wouldn't be in high school.
No, but I teach high school though.
Yeah, but you see what they're doing too. They're saying this has to stop. And so we know that you, and I mean no disrespect here, but you're not trying to start a march that says it has to stop, but your students are. So the next group that's coming is beginning to shape what they want Earth to be. And I have a lot of faith in them. And I don't think any of us have any reason to not have faith in them. I think they're great kids. And I think that they are taking things in, and I think they're understanding, well, let me deal with this problem today and that problem tomorrow. I think they're doing a good job.
Okay. Well, I recently spoke with some Black Panthers, and they actually said the issue with our youth is we're not angry or we're not willing to die for the struggle. And as you know, if you were part of the Black Panther Party, you were willing to die for the struggle, and so many did die for the struggle. And so I want to, do you agree with that? Do you, I know you said that we need to pay attention, but do you think that we're not angry enough or we're not mad enough to actually take action? Because as you know, emotion equates to action.
No, I disagree with that totally. I think, and I'll say it again, I think that the kids today, the youngsters today, I have a granddaughter. Uh,
Yes.
you're 28, so you're just a little bit outside of being my granddaughter. I think the kids today are thinking through what it is that they think that they should do, and they're picking up the axe as it was when they found the right tree.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I disagree with that. I think people are trying to say, oh, and I think we did a good job. I've said that, but we didn't do everything. We just cut down the tree that was in front of us, and some of the weeds grew up, and somebody's going to have to do it. I think the kids are doing all right, and I think it's not fair for the Panthers or anybody else to sit around and say, oh, we did all of the work and the kids aren't doing it. I think the kids are doing what they see. And I think that we have to have as much patience with the kids as we have had, as our parents and grandparents had with us.
Okay. So have you ever heard of the Indigo Children?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so what you just described about how you knocked down the trees, and now my generation has to just pull up the weeds to like cultivate the garden. There's a theory about indigo children where the first wave was the baby boomers, and they came in to pretty much plow the land. And now my generation, the millennials, they're there to tend to the land in order to bring up the generation or the revolution, which is the youth, and to cultivate them. Because as you said, because I do agree that kids are smart today. And I do agree that part of the revolution is in education. I had a handle that used to say, I'm the leader of the free world posing as a kindergarten teacher. Because shouts out to all my kindergarten teachers, because you learn your basic foundation skills are set in kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that to say you have to cultivate the mind and mold the mind so they can understand that the cage does not exist.
Right.
And with that being said, I do agree, because with the school shootings, we're actually doing a film. And so my kids, they're creating a skit about getting shot. And one of the students, she wrote out all of these hashtags, because I teach about personal branding and digital footprinting. And she wrote all these hashtags out. And the one hashtag that I really enjoyed was shoot hoops, not guns. And I was like, yes. And it's really about, and they're learning how to utilize their voice. So that's one thing I think is super important in education, is you have to learn how to ignite your voice, because your voice is your superpower. That is your weapon.
Right.
So moving into, I would like to transition and discuss your time as a writer. So with Gemini, you said, I remember you were saying that people sometimes don't understand your writing. How have you addressed rejection versus criticism as an artist?
Well, I think it's, and I just wrote, some eighth grader wrote me, and I wrote him back and said, well, one, if you're going to be an artist, you're going to be lonely. So the first thing you have to understand is that you're going to be lonely. If you're going to be lonely, you're going to be misunderstood. Mm-hmm. So you have to make up your mind what's important to you. Is it important to win awards? Is it important for people to, fall over and just decide, oh, aren't you great? Or is it important to do the work that you think needs to be done? For people like me, it's important to do the work that I think, and I still think, needs to be done. The voice that I had when I was your age, as a 28-year-old beginning to write Black Feeling, Black Talk, mm-hmm. is different from the voice that I have at 74 writing A Good Cry. And so I'm supposed to learn between 28 and 74. I'm supposed to have learned something, and I hope that I did. And what I've learned, I hope I have given voice to. I'm not trying. I've had, and I've been fortunate to have 3 bestsellers, but it never surprises me that I don't. Mm. It never surprises me that my books don't, make the bestseller. It never surprises me. You were talking about winning a Nobel or winning a Pulitzer or winning anything else. It doesn't surprise me that I don't. When I look at my work, I'm looking at the work and saying, am I pleased with it? Have I done my best work? And that's all I'm going to do. And I am very proud of that.
Yes. You are an amazing writer. I don't know if you remember the first time you met me, but we were in like the women's. It was a women's. I don't even remember. So, but the point is that I remember you, and I remember I handed you my card, and I told you to call me, and not to put you on Front Street because you never called me, but I definitely asked you to be my mentor in that moment. And I say that to say, as a writer, because I recognize that in your writing, you do write your best. And I think that is really, as a writer, you do have to believe in your own work. But you have to, I think you have to believe in anything that you do full heartedly. And you have represented that in all of your works that you have presented. You can tell that they're very thought out and they're originally from you. So.
Well, thank you very much. I grew up in a town called Lincoln Heights. I was born in Knoxville, Tennessee, but I grew up in Lincoln Heights, and I've written in the new book. I've written a poem on Lincoln Heights, and the easiest thing to forget is that Lincoln Heights had a group of young men. They were the Isley brothers, and it was Ronald Rudolph and O'Kelly. It was Vernon, Ronald Rudolph and O'Kelly, but Vernon got hit by a car and got killed. And Mrs. Isley moved moved her family actually to New Jersey. But the reason that I bring it up and that we have to remember is that Michael Jackson, who became a big star and had other issues, but that Michael Jackson learned everything that he knew about being a big R&B star from Ronald Isley. That's who he learned from. And so, you're sitting there and you're looking at things, you're saying, we've done a good job. And there's an ad now, I really forget what it is, but there's an ad on television, and it's Ronald, and I hear it, and it's like, that's Ronald Isley, and it's so wonderful. O'Kelly was my good friend when I had my first book party, and I had it at Michelle's bookstore. O'Kelly was there, and he was like a big brother, and he took everybody to the Russian tea room, and he said, Deborah, let's go to the Russian tea room. We're going to celebrate. And the Isley brothers were rich, and at that point they were rich and well known, and it was so wonderful that we've all been there for each other. That's a long way of saying, if you are writing, the first reader is you. And you have to keep that in mind. If you don't laugh, it's not funny. If you don't cry, it's not sad. You have to keep that in mind, that you are your first reader. And it's something that you have to be proud of. You have to say, well, I did my best. Not that I did everything, not that there's nothing else there. I did my best. And then you kind of put it away. And I always say to my students, and I mean that too, try not to remember your work too well, because if you remember too well, you'll always be trying not to contradict yourself. At some point between 28 and 74, you got to contradict yourself because you got to have learned something that's going to be different. That's what life is all about. And you've got to let yourself be free enough to say, oh, I have learned something, and this is where I'm going now.
Okay. Have you ever overcome rejection?
What do you mean?
I mean, as I mean, quite frankly, you just said that the only person that matters to you about your writing is yourself. So you please yourself in your writing. So therefore, when you get critics, or let's say if someone decides not to publish your book, for the most part, have you ever dealt with rejection before?
Well, I don't. I'm not to say that. I've been with the same publisher forever. I've been with William Morrow, who was purchased by HarperCollins. So I haven't had that kind of a problem. There's a couple of books right now that I'm really want to work on, and one is a book called "And Yeah, This Is a Love Poem," which is actually about the Million Man March. And I'm having trouble. I don't think we've gotten to a rejection point, but I'm having trouble understanding why this should be an illustrated children. I don't have trouble understanding. I'm having trouble getting my editor to understand why this should be a children's illustrated love book, an illustrated children's poem. Her position is it's too mature because we have a couple of things in there. We have a rape in there, and we're following the Million Man March. I think that the kids can understand, or I think that if they don't understand it, then it's not offending them. So that's about the closest we've come. But I think we're gonna get that done, because if anybody needs to know that they're loved right now, I think young Black men need to know that they're loved.
Yes,
and if old ladies like me can't get a poem, that the poem is there. So I've done the poem, but I think that we need an illustrated book so that they can carry it around and look at it and say, yeah, somebody cares. I
Right.
think that's important.
Right. So speaking of giving love to our black men, how do you feel about the current Starbucks situation that just took place where two black men were arrested because they walked into Starbucks and they didn't purchase anything, and I believe the manager called the police on them. And then the
Oh, yeah.
police actually arrested them and then held them in jail for up to 8 hours.
Yeah. I know a check was written, and I know you know a check was written. The chief of police in Philadelphia apologized, and Starbucks fired the manager, and you know that. And they're going to close Starbucks down and have a talk with all of its people. So I am glad that Starbucks took it seriously. They didn't try to explain it away. They didn't, not, they just took it seriously, and they tried to make it, they tried to let you understand that this is not who they are. Because I go to Starbucks, as do quite a few people,
Right.
almost every morning. I get my coffee, and I was thinking, oh, I hate it. If Starbucks doesn't take care of this, I'm going to have to do something else with my
Right.
coffee. And I know that Starbucks was thinking that also, but I just didn't think it was Starbucks. I think that that little dumb racist that they hired, they're going to make sure that they don't hire anybody like that again, because that's what it was. She saw the guys, and she was like, "Oh no, get out." I go. I have a girlfriend, and she and I meet on Wednesday, and we sit down and have a cup of coffee, and we sit there for an hour or so and just get caught up on each other. And Starbucks is like your cafe, your neighborhood cafe. And if Starbucks is not going to do that, then Starbucks is going to be not just a loss, but there's something else that's going to happen to America. We just can't have managers like that having that kind of attitude. And I was glad to see that the CEO of Starbucks got on it, got to Philadelphia, fired her, and the police chief got in front of it and apologized and said he was wrong to have accepted the policeman's word on it, and I thought that was good. And as I say, though nobody has told me, I'm old enough to know that a couple of checks got written, and I'm glad. You know they did. That's
No,
why.
no, I definitely know they did. I'm actually happy they did because one of my best friends is addicted to Starbucks, and I
Oh,
have no idea what she would do. And she's a totally black radical, so I don't know what she would do if she couldn't go to Starbucks. She would have a meltdown, and somehow that would be my fault. I just don't have time, quite
I
personally.
understand that.
No, because I don't have that many friends, to be honest. And speaking of, and it's hard to formulate relationships, so the ones I do have, I want to hold on to. And speaking of which, I know that with relationships, you mentioned in your book, well, I mean, well, you've spoken multiple times, and you said that you're very grateful for the relationships that you have and that you have cultivated and built because
Yeah,
you said that you weren't a friendly person, right? Well,
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not friendly. I'm not, and I don't think, and I mentioned it earlier in speaking with you. Uh, any writer, but I think any artist, period, is lonely, and I
mm,
think that any artist that doesn't understand that is going to have problems. And I don't know why Michael Jackson is on my mind right now, but if Michael Jackson had understood that to have the kind of talent that he had, you're going to be lonely.
right.
So first of all, and I think the kids miss this, it's good to find a small church that you can go to on Sunday. At first, everybody's going to be very excited. Oh, Michael Jackson came to church. But then they're going to settle down, and you're going to have a community that you function with. And you have to work with having friends. Nobody just wakes up in the morning and everybody's nice to you. You work on your friendships, and I think that that's important. And I always envied my mother. She's passed now, as you know. But my mother had two really incredible friends, Flora and Teresa, and I always envied her those friends, because no matter what, they always had her back. And I thought, if I can just get two friends like that, I've done. I've gotten more than my fair share.
Right.
And so I'm happy to say that I have a couple of friends that I count on in the same way. And you work on that. That's just not something, well, you're talking about, you didn't want to have to, you don't want your friend to be upset about Starbucks, you know.
No, I don't.
I understand. No, well, Starbucks did the right thing, but you know what I'm saying? You want to keep your friends, and you want to work with the people you know and love.
Right, right. I completely agree. Now, one thing about you, have managed to keep your life so separate from the public eye? Are you on social media? Do you use social
No,
media?
I don't do it. When I retire, I'm going to retire in a couple of years. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to take those things. What do you call it, computer course, and I'm going to learn how to do that thing. What do you call it, email,
Okay.
and I don't know if I'll ever learn to tweet because it doesn't make sense, and Donald Trump does, and I don't want to do anything Donald Trump does. But I am going to learn how to communicate a bit on that. But I think it takes a lot of time. And I've seen a lot of writers spend more time communicating. What are those things too? iPhone.
Mm-hmm. That
They
too.
spend so Yeah, spend so much time doing that they're not getting their work done. They're not thinking. They're not daydreaming. They're not looking out the window and saying, I wonder if or what." And
Mm-hmm.
I just can't spend my time like that. You only have It's only 24 hours in a day.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I wish we had more time. To be honest, that would be really great. My question is, so you've managed to pretty much separate your life. How have you managed to separate your at home life? Because there are no pictures of your granddaughter or your son on Google. We only know about them because you talked about them maybe once or twice in interviews. So, how have you been able to maintain a public presence but keep your private life separate?
Oh, I just don't think anybody's interested. You read the books or you don't. I don't think that Tommy and Kai, and that's their name, should have to be bothered with with me.
Mm-hmm.
And Kai's a little gourmet, so she's a lot of fun, and she's also a bright, talented girl.
Mm-hmm.
And if she becomes a writer, she'll talk about Grandma. She calls me Grandma Nick. She'll talk about Grandma Nick, but that's her voice. It has nothing to do with me and mine.
Right.
And you heard the dog, and the dog is crazy. So the one person you probably can hear, the one voice you hear is the dog.
You do hit a dog. Now, I know that your father used to call you Kim, and you were started to be called Nikki just because your older sister Gary called you that, right?
I, you know, I don't know how I got to be called Nikki. And I said, when I transition, when I die,
Mm-hmm.
I know that I'm going to hell because I don't like a lot of people and I've done a lot of things, but I'm going to get a day pass to heaven. And I'm going to go and ask my mother, how did I get to be called Nikki? Because she probably remembers. I should have asked. I should have asked several years ago, and I failed to ask that. And there's nobody to ask now because my mother and her two sisters are gone. Everybody's gone.
Yeah.
So there's nobody to ask until I get a day pass to heaven.
You're the oldest now, correct?
I'm the only right now. Yeah, I'm the oldest person in the family. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember you saying. But so where did Kim come from?
I don't know.
Okay.
That was that was just we're back to I am not she and she is not me. So you have to find a way. You have to find a voice into it. I haven't
Okay.
used it anymore, but that was a voice that was important then.
Okay. 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 Very good. Very good. So now, is there a different Nikki that we're getting? Is there a Professor Nikki? Is there a poet Nikki? Is there an at-home Nikki sitting in a bathrobe, kicking it, eating peanut butter with a spoon Nikki, or is it? Do
I
we
eat
get
my
what we
peanut
see?
butter with a cracker, and I really do. Eat cream. That's good for you. And I've had some health problems, so peanut butter is, as you know, is good for you. I
Mm-hmm.
The last bathrobe I had, and that's funny that you mentioned that, was silk. And my aunt Agnes loved that bathrobe, and she came to visit one time and said, "Oh, really? I loved it." And she had been saying that, and I finally just said I'd take it, and I packed it and gave it to her. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're coming by my house, you're usually going to see me in jeans, and that's what I am. And the dog is sitting on me, and I like to cook, so I do some cooking. And right now I'm running out of time, so I don't get as much reading done,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll be glad when I have a bit more time. We go to the Caribbean in December, so I'll be going down. I take a bunch of books with me. I do have a what is that thing? I have a Kindle,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't enjoy reading on the Kindle as much as I do reading a book. I'm still a book person, so I take 4 or 5 books, and I can sit on the beach and read it, and that's what you're going to see. Or now that maybe summer is coming, I'm not sure summer is coming at all, but it snowed 2 days ago here in Virginia. But when summer does come, you'll see her name is Cleo. Cleo and I will be on the deck. And I like to cook. I like to grill. So we'll be grilling, or I'll be grilling because Cleo will be barking at the squirrels, and I'll be grilling and reading. So,
Okay. What's your favorite thing to grill?
like a rack of lamb.
Ooh, when are you grilling? When's the next time?
Come on down.
Don't tell me that, Miss Nikki. Don't tell me that, because I will be there. I will be there. Um, Speaking of cookouts, have you had Utopia beer lately?
You know, Utopia beer, I got it because my cousin Pat, who's my only girl cousin, my mother died. Well, let me start with the birth. My mother was born on January the 5th, and her mother was born on January the 6th. And they both died within a couple of months of each other. And so she's Pat. And so Pat and I were trying to think of what should we do to celebrate our mothers. But both of our mothers liked beer, and neither one of us do. Pat doesn't like beer, and I don't like beer. And so we said, oh, we should have a beer because we're trying to be big girls, you know. And what we realized is we don't like. And I said, well, if there's anything you don't like, what you should do is the best. And so we looked it up, and I looked it up, and she looked it up. She lives in California. And the best beer, of course, is Utopia. And Utopia is every other year. Now, Utopia will be made again in 2019. There was no Utopia in 2018. And so Pat and I got a bottle. But Utopia is, $250 a pint. So I don't drink that. I bought it. We drank it once. And so that's going to be it for Utopia.
You want to know something else that's very similar to Utopia that's extremely hard to find?
What?
Your book with James Baldwin.
Oh.
It is no, I don't think you understand. See, it's extremely hard. I have literally scoured every single library in DC. I even went to the Library of Congress. The Library of Congress, that is supposed to have a copy of every book ever made, doesn't even have a copy.
Well,
on Amazon, it's like $400.
Amazon has everything. Yeah. Amazon has everything, and you'll find it there. It was a pleasure working with Jimmy, and I consider myself very lucky that he would spend time with me. But Amazon has it. It might be a used copy, but they have it.
No, it's for $400. They're definitely so it's actually more than the Utopia beer.
It's still more than Utopia, but at least if it was Utopia, you could drink it. So with the $400 book, you can keep it.
Yes, I will keep it and frame it, and nobody is allowed to touch it. So with that being said, you've talked about how you balance your life. You talked about how you have tackled rejection with your writing, and let's touch on feminism really quickly. With the Me Too movement picking up and Oprah's Time Is Up speech, do you agree that the paradigm and culture of brutality put on women is coming to an end?
I think that women are now saying we're tired of it. And again, we're now back to a generation that my mother's generation, they wouldn't even admit that their husbands beat them. They wouldn't even say that. So I'm glad. I was glad. I like the Me Too generation. I, of course, like almost everybody on earth, I admire what Oprah has been doing. I think that that's important. And I'm glad that women are speaking up for themselves. I sincerely hope that Bill Cosby gets sent to jail for what he did. And I hope that we impeach Donald Trump for what he's done. And I was so glad that Alabama refused to elect Ray Moore for what he did to 14-year-old girls. It's time that we stop that. And so I think that the women are speaking up, and I am very proud of the women. And I think it's time that the women said, oh no, we don't have to be bothered with this. This is not something we deserve. We're not gonna let it happen.
Yes, I can agree. And just to backtrack once again, you did speak on education as a teacher. Do you believe that African American literature should have a community-based learning component?
I think that everybody should know African American literature. Everybody sings our songs. Everybody all over the earth right now. You can go to any country in Africa. You can go to China, and you're going to hear hip hop. Or you could, of course, everybody cheers for our athletes. In any sport that's being played, there's going to be a couple of black men or a couple of black women who are playing the sport that we're all cheering for. So I think, yeah, we should be aware of what we've been writing too. Yeah, why wouldn't you?
Right, exactly. I agree. It's definitely about staying woke and, as you had said before, paying more attention. Real quick, just a couple of questions from our live audience that we have.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Trey wants to know, what advice do you have for educators who are teaching Black students how to pick up the torch from their ancestors in a system that is whitewashed and anti-Black?
I think that the first thing you have to think about is it doesn't matter what the system is. What are you trying to accomplish? And I think we spend too much time worrying about how white people looking at us. What do they think about? What are you trying to accomplish? And so what you're going to do is one, learn whatever it is you need to learn. And there's a lot to be learned. And you're going to learn that. You're going to read. Every day you have to read something. Just honest to God, every day you have to read something. So I think that what you do is you remind yourself, you train yourself every day. I'm going to read something, and just because of the latest book by Kwame Alexander, whose work I love so very, very much. But Kwame has, and the new book is called Rebound. And what he has is in Rebound, Chuck Bell, whom, if you don't read the book, you don't know who I'm talking about there. But Chuck Bell is a father. And his good cousin, Roxy, told him every day write something. And so that would, and he ended up writing, as he said, not a diary, but a journal. It's so wonderful. And I think that that's what you do. You read a little bit and you write a little bit and you go forward. You're not going to change the world. And if you think you are, you're wrong. But you can make sure that you are the best you can be.
Okay. And from Simona, what was your inspiration behind wrote a good omelet? I wrote a good omelet.
And ate a hot poem after loving you. That's obvious. That's obvious.
Okay. The next question that we have from Ethiopia. What is one thing every single writer, creative, academic, etc., should always keep/do?
Be honest and be true to yourself. I mean, sincerely, that's all. Because I say it again, you're not going to change the world, but you are going to be honest and true to yourself. And if you can do the best you, then that's all you can expect. I said to my students, and I say it all the time, most of the great books that we read are 200 and 300 years old. The people who wrote them had no idea that we would still be reading their books, that we would still be trying to figure out what they meant, what they said. We would still be learning from them. And I think you have to write for yourself today as honestly as you can. And we're all going to hope that tomorrow is going to come. But we won't be here. We won't be here 200 years from now. Nobody's going to be saying, what did you mean by I wrote a good omelet? I'll be gone. I'll be sitting in hell thinking, damn, why didn't she know what that
I think you're going to go everywhere else but hell,
my
man.
dog is going to have a fit in 2 seconds because it's her dinner time.
Okay.
I haven't taught her how to cook, and I haven't taught her how to punch for an elevator. So it's 2 things. And we laugh. I say to her, Cleo, you ought to learn how to cook. And she just looks at me like, fool, I got you. So I'm going to go and cook for the dog.
No, I understand. Real quick, do you still want to evolve into a sea turtle?
I would love to be a sea turtle. And I would love it even more if I could do one thing. Nobody's asked me this, but if I could do just one thing, I would want to see all peoples keep the oceans cleaner, because we're killing the turtles, we're killing the fish. And I think that we have to quit throwing things off our boats. I don't have a boat, of course, but I think keeping the ocean clean would be wonderful. And then if I could be a sea turtle, I'm going to live 100 years, and maybe I'd learn to sing, and maybe I'd find a good partner. I mean, it's a lot of things that happen when you're a sea turtle. I think it'd be interesting.
That's very true. That's very true. And the last bit, what is the legacy you want to leave behind, and what advice do you have for future generations?
I think for the future generation, you got to love yourself. And I don't do legacy. I'm just me, and all I've got is me, and whatever's left is going to be me. I hope a little bit of it is love, and I hope a little bit of it is anger, and I hope a little bit of it is intelligence. So you kind of put it together, and you might get, a good pot of beans. I don't know.
Very good. Miss Nikki, can I get you to say, this is Hijinks on We Act Radio, do something? Or you can say whatever message you want to say, followed by do something.
This is Nikki Giovanni on hijinks. Do something for us today. Give a smile to somebody.
Hey, thank you, Auntie Nikki. Once again, it was such a pleasure. I will be down to your house for that record lamb. Just
come on down, give me a call. I have it ready.
I will. Can I reach you on the number that Miss Jenny sent me?
The number you reaches me, absolutely.
Oh, good luck. I will be calling you. Thank you,
Share
Auntie.
that number though.
Huh?
Do not share that.
Oh, I'm not sharing that number with anyone. With no one, ma'am.
Not at all.
That is on lock. That is on lock. Okay, it's not going anywhere.
It's been a pleasure being on Hijinks. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much for coming on. You have an amazing day. Say hello to the family for me. Thank Miss Jenny for me. I appreciate her. And it's been and everybody's waving at you. They're all saying goodbye. They love you. They want you to know that they love you and that you are truly a living legend. Thank you so much, Auntie Nikki.
Thank you.
All right, peace. And everyone else who is out there listening, this is Eljay'em, your host of Hijinks, your global campfire, connecting stories from around the world and from around the block. You just heard the living legend here, Nikki Giovanni. Until next time, peace, love, and appreciation. Let me go.